So PIF, David Hopkinson and Eddie Howe have grouped together and decided to do a remake of the Titanic as Newcastle become a sinking ship at the moment. While I've been on holiday for a week, we're going to go through everything that's happened and just recap and go through all of the news. This isn't about one transfer. It's not about one player leaving or wanting to leave. This is about what happens when a football club loses momentum and how Newcastle United have spent 3 years building belief. And right now, that belief is beginning to disappear, not only for fans, but for players. So if you're new around here, I'm Adam. This is Two for Joy. I'm going to give you my honest opinion on everything that's happened over the past week. Get down there, like and subscribe. Otherwise, let's get into it. So the first point I want to make is basically the squad is being attacked, and this starts with the news of Tottenham agreeing personal terms with Sandro Tonali, a huge wage increase, a 6-year contract supposedly offered to him for £260,000 a week, and Newcastle rejecting a bid of around 80 million. This is the first sign. I mean, I think it's probably the right time to sell Sandro if you're going to bring in £100 million. But this is the first of many players to leave Newcastle, in my opinion. And obviously, the big news coming out of Arsenal, getting in touch with Bruno's representatives while he's out at the World Cup. And a first bid rejected of under 60 million and another expected. But this isn't about the bid. It's not about Arsenal lowballing us. It's about a lack of confidence. It's about a lack of consistency from Newcastle. And big clubs don't always need their first offer to be accepted. Sometimes the objective is just to make the player start thinking. And this is exactly what Liverpool did with Alexander Isak. You don't need acceptance. You just need uncertainty. And that's what Arsenal are currently doing. While Gabriel will be talking up Arsenal to Bruno. And there are parts of this where I look at Bruno and I have to say, 28 years old, just over 2 years remaining on his contract. He's on £160,000 a week. The world is his oyster and he's brought us a trophy. He's been a captain and really we can't expect him to stay. We can't expect him to have loyalty to this football club if this football club doesn't show the ambition that's required. If you see players like Anthony Gordon, who are subpar compared to Bruno, getting moves to the likes of Barcelona, you have to look at it from Bruno's perspective and be like, the world stage is his. The performances he's putting in the World Cup show that he is the calibre of player that can go on to play for these elite clubs. And you can't expect him to stay through pure loyalty to the football club. But Newcastle have become an easy target. And you have to ask yourself, why clubs are targeting Newcastle players? Because Newcastle look vulnerable. And why do we look vulnerable? Because we've stood still. We've stood still in the transfer market. We've stood still when it comes to development. We've stood still when it comes to progressing the structure of this club, our stadium, our training ground, our sponsorship. When they smell uncertainty, they will attack. They'll come for us. They'll come to take our players. And you can't expect these players not to have doubt. And the lack of intent from Newcastle creates doubt. So it's probably the strongest opinion is players don't only judge clubs by their wages. They judge clubs by their ambition. And the questions we have to be asking, or certainly Newcastle players like Anthony Gordon, Bruno, Tonali will be asking, who are we signing? Are we improving? Can we compete? Where is this project going? So without clear direction from the football club, those answers become unclear and players start to look elsewhere. And that's kind of key into this whole structure is the broken promises. And we've seen this go back 2 seasons with Alexander Isak being told he'd be offered the contract. But fans were told this will be the biggest rebuild. The aggressive summer. We'll go into this and be aggressive and proactive in the transfer market. We've signed one goalkeeper and missed out on a target, Victor Munoz, purely down to not paying the release clause? Have we learned our lessons? Have we learned to do a business early? Or are we going to wait until the World Cup's over and try and target players who are realistically out of our reach? But instead, we're missing targets. We're slow in negotiations. We don't match release clauses to try and trigger the transfers quickly. And rivals step in, like I say, exactly like Victor Munoz going to Liverpool. 3 weeks negotiating, Liverpool just simply paid the release clause and got the deal done like that. That's the problem. That is the problem with Newcastle. But the budget doesn't match the messaging that's coming out of Newcastle. And I will talk a little bit about the financial side, because the reports are now saying Newcastle have the smallest transfer budget since the takeover. And people are saying, how has this happened? Mismanaged money. Misspent money last season. Paying way over the odds for Premier League proven players. These are all things that will affect you down the line. And we have overspent. We have overspent on too many players and not picked out the gems and not picked out the bargains and not invested in the floor of this team. We've tried to invest in the ceiling rather than raising the floor. And this is where Newcastle really ultimately need to be at the moment. But perhaps the information's deliberately being put out there. Maybe Newcastle are wanting selling clubs to believe that they don't have endless money. I can understand that, as, to be fair, clubs have done us over with transfers like Anthony Elanga, £55 million. It's way over the asking price. It's way over what we should be paying. Fantastic business for Nottingham Forest. But prices are set to rise and we can't afford to keep paying those prices. Newcastle as a club have limits and they need negotiations to become easier. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a market where realistically we're shopping in bargain basement rather than in players that should be, or we should be in the market for. But we're still shopping in the wrong market. And I say this because the Felix Mecha news coming out that Newcastle are targeting Felix Mecha, and there's conflicting reports on this. So basically, some of the media outlets are saying that we've gone for Mecha. Newcastle are interested, and then the clubs come out and said the valuation of him's too high. Well, 70 million euros, 60 to 70 million euros was always the price tag for him. It has been for 2 seasons. So why Newcastle thought they could go in and take a promising player who's key to a team for an undervalued offer, I have no idea. And this is what really gets me, is when I look across Premier League, Championship, shopping in our pool, we shouldn't be shopping at the World Cup. Every player in the World Cup, their valuation goes up. There are players there, like I mentioned, Balogun from USA. Balogun was rated at 25 million euros last season. We didn't go for Balogun last season. He looks to be having a really good World Cup. Now if Newcastle want to go for him, he'll be 40 million, 50 million euros. They've missed their opportunity to pick players who are gems from teams that have less draw than we do. Where I kind of want to look at with the examples of previous recruitment, we brought in Nick Pope for £10 million. We brought in Kieran Trippier for minimal money. We brought in Tino Livramento for 30, Lewis Hall for 35. This is the market we should be shopping in. We shouldn't be looking in to bringing in your Nick Voltemada, your Johan Wissa for overpriced money, your Anthony Elanga, aiming for the top end of the squad. We should be raising the bottom end of the squad. And there are players in here who we should be getting rid of. Jacob Murphy needs to go. Dan Burn needs to be looked to be replaced. And I love Dan Burn, but he needs to be looked to be replaced. Joe Willock needs to look to be replaced. There are players out there. I forget the name of the centre midfielder from Coventry, but a perfect example would come in and be better than Joe Willock. Tom Fellows of Southampton would be a better right winger, has better stats than Jacob Murphy. Long term, these players aren't huge fees. You're talking 10, 20, 25 million quid. But in the long run, we will bring in players that will blossom into players that we can sell for 40, 50, 60. I'll go back to João Pedro. João Pedro was a perfect example. We agreed and we had a deal set for £21 million to bring in João Pedro from Watford. At the time, we changed our mind, pivoted to Isak. Now, that wasn't a bad deal, but we paid 3 times the money for Isak. If we'd have brought in João Pedro in this market, £21 million, you're laughing. And Newcastle are kind of, I feel, heading in the wrong direction, or the recruitment has lost its identity, is probably the best way of putting it. Under the early ownership, the recruitment was hungry, it was improving. We looked at Premier League proven and attainable players. They were players that realistically we had the draw to bring in. Now it feels like we're trying to sign players that are of an elite level or elite clubs want to sign, and those deals are naturally harder, which leaves us in the market looking stupid, day by day looking stupid. And every one of these deals that doesn't come off sends a message to the rest of the world and the rest of the players across the transfer market that maybe we don't have the draw, maybe we don't have the intent, maybe we don't have the drive and ambition to go anywhere. And that leaves this club in a position where your top players, your Tonali, your Bruno, your Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon, who's already gone, it changes the entire feeling around the football club when we don't have the draw. We don't seem to be making progress. And these players, they will look for their own careers, and rightly so. And we will look like we're starting to fail instead of building. And this kind of leads me on to the final point, which is the biggest danger isn't losing Bruno or losing Tonali. The biggest danger is losing momentum. And momentum brought us Champions League football. It brought us better players. It brought us bigger commercial deals. It built us a better reputation. But you lose momentum and you lose everything that comes with that. Everything becomes harder. Every deal becomes harder. And like in conclusion with this, Newcastle don't necessarily need to spend £250 million in this window. They need clarity. They need a direction. They need decisive recruitment, which is something we're really lacking at the moment. And if the money genuinely isn't there, stop shopping in the £70 to £80 million market. Stop sending scouts out to look at these players and go back to finding the next Livramento, the next Hall, the next Gordon. Raise the standard of the whole squad is what we need to do. And it's where we're failing at the moment. Because Newcastle we're standing still. And other clubs won't. That's the problem. Other clubs won't. And they'll keep coming for our best players. When you look across the market for Newcastle in this summer transfer window, out of the big 6, it's like 5 new managers. There's 5 clubs that are going to go out there and throw their weight into this transfer market. And if we are shopping in the same pool as them, or are targeting the same transfers as them, we're set to lose out again. And this will end up being probably a worse window than last season was. And that's the worrying thing. There is a big topic that I haven't really discussed, which I think is kind of key to Newcastle at the moment in the transfer market, which it comes down to recruitment as well. But when did our recruitment, or when did our football club become a sieve? When did we start leaking information and stop plugging the holes to every player we're targeting in the market? If I can go online and I can tell you who Newcastle are putting a bid in for, with relative certainty that we are there and we have looked and scouts have been seen, we have a problem. Because in the days when Newcastle first got taken over, nobody really knew we were going for Nick Pope. Nobody knew we were going for Bruno Guimarães. Nobody knew we were going for Sven Botman. Even Sandro Tonali. When the Sandro Tonali deal was going through, we all believed we were going for Nico Barella from Inter Milan, when actually we were out there negotiating with Sandro Tonali. There is no diversionary tactic from this Newcastle recruitment. We are not putting out false information in the way we did before. And what I feel is Newcastle should be throwing mud until it sticks. Throw out enough information for transfers. We're going for this player. We're going for this player. We're going for this player. And do your business behind closed doors. Act more efficiently. Be more aggressive. Show more ambition. Like I say, if you've enjoyed the video, give me a like. Give me a sub. Hit the bell notification. Hype the video. All the good things. But hit me up down in the comments and let me know what you think. Because this last week has turned from... I don't want to say a sinking ship, a crossroads. We are at a crossroads. Realistically, if Newcastle go out in the next 3 weeks, they can change the tide of this transfer window. If they go out and get business done, get deals done. I mean, supposedly we're looking at Antonio Nusa. I'm a big fan of this kid. He's a very talented player, but we've highlighted that we're looking at him before we've even spoke to his agent or put a bid in to the club. It's almost highlighting to the rest of the world who we think are good players. And realistically, if you look across the board, every player that we've highlighted and targeted, the big clubs are now looking at our direction, where we're heading. And people say we have bad scouts. We don't, put the right things out. Realistically, we highlighted João Pedro before time, Ekitike before time, Bruno before time, Sandro before time, Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento. We have highlighted Alexander Isak, big players. These players will go on to be the elite stage. I don't think our recruitment direction or our recruitment aim is the problem. You're just aiming for players that are too high up that tree now. Come back down and find those players before they make it to that next step and bring them in there. Like I say, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully the news will get better in the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, take it easy. Try and stay out of the heat. And hopefully I will see you in the next one.